Welcome back to Brazil Crypto Report. Today I'm joined by Luca Cosivi of Open Zeppelin at ETHSamba. We talk about Rio Onchain Week, which is happening March 19 through 24 and looks to convene 500 Web3 builders from across the Brazil ecosystem. Okay, great. So we are here today with Luca Cosivi of ETHSamba. Luca, it's really great to have you on the show.
Great to be here.
So why don't you give yourself a quick introduction just to get started and tell us a bit about your background and tell us a bit more about ETHSamba also.
Yeah, for sure. Well, my name's Luca. I'm based here in Rio, Brazil. I partly grew up here, from in my teenage years, and I've more recently come back. In my full time, I lead our ecosystem development efforts at Open Zeppelin. But on the side, a few years ago, we started an Ethereum meta community here in Brazil called ETHSamba. We started organizing hackathons, community meetups, and that's grown into a bigger focus in Brazil for building on Ethereum and building Web3, infrastructure and applications. And so, yeah, that's what we've been up to.
I know you've got a lot of the different community groups across Brazil, a lot of the different chains, a lot of the different I don't know how if communities is necessarily the right word for it, but little pockets of activity, like different pockets of people doing different things across the country. And you've got a lot of these folks involved in some capacity or who have participated in some capacity. But maybe talk a bit about that, like who are the various kind of tribes involved in this project?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess I can start back with the people that kind of started ETHSamba, and it happened last DevCon in Bogota. We got together with a few community members. There was quite a few Brazilians there, and we started discussing the reality of Brazil and how we would be seeing all these massive hackathons happening around the world, and focused around Ethereum, and pretty cool applications coming out of it, or infrastructures and teams and projects. And we thought that Brazil was underserved in that regard, and we were not really planning something, but as we started telling people that we wanted to start this meta community and started to understand and talk to various of these tribes in Brazil of like, what should we do, right, to kind of serve Brazil better. There was last Ethereum Rio, there was a gap in the sense that people wanted a hackathon, and so we decided to organize that hackathon. And it was a small start. It was around 250 hackers, but people got to have a hackathon in Rio, which is quite characteristic with the amazing views and weather we have, and a lot of projects came out of that. A lot of hackers got jobs in the industry, and this year we're doing another one, and I think if you mentioned all the tribes around Brazil. I think something that's characteristic of Brazil, when I talk to a lot of builders, and I think we've discussed this before, is that there are many people that are very deep into crypto here, right? Whether that's investing, right, or even building and working on some of these projects, right? Whether that's working at the Ethereum Foundation on Starknet or Filecoin. And these people are kind of, spread over the country. It's a big country, but there's not really like a common ground, a common space, whether that's physical or online, where people get together. And I think a great example that, it's a contrast to Brazil is ETHDenver, right? I mean, even though, there's more and more people that are kind of, I would say, creating a little bit of FUD and saying that, ETHDenver is not the same. I still do see ETHDenver as kind of the meeting ground for all the American tribes, crypto tribes that are there, and it is a massive event, right? There are thousands of people, and just Brazil just doesn't have that. Even though we have a little bit less people in the country, it's still a pretty big country. And if you compare it to the community in Argentina or in other similar Latam countries, I think people here are just spread out throughout the country and don't really get together. And I think, the downside of that when, we talk is that, often people are contributing to projects outside of the country and don't really have an impact on Brazil itself. And yeah, Brazil definitely needs, definitely has its own set of problems, and I think the technology we work on a daily basis, can solve a lot of these. So yeah.
Okay, great. That's super helpful backdrop there, and I think it is kind of a mystery, right? That, like for example, in the U.S., basically like every city has its own ETH brand, right? Like there's like ETH Seattle and ETH, Milwaukee or whatever, ETH Chicago. Like every little city has its own ETH brand spun up, with Denver being kind of like the mega brand. Or like the kind of the mecca of sorts, or the Woodstock or whatever if you want to call it, where everyone just kind of piles in. But in Brazil, like you only have you have Ethereum and you have ETHSamba, and like that, those are kind of the only two that exist to my knowledge. So for a country of comparable size to the US, like you only have two of these brands that spun up, versus in the US you have, you probably can't even count them all. So yeah, it is a bit of a paradox, right? And it does seem like somebody like yourself and like the team needs to has done a good job of taking the initiative to really sort of bootstrap some of this stuff, and just take somebody to kind of get the ball rolling, essentially, and then hoping that some of these folks that you mentioned that are deeply involved in the industry but maybe just not in kind of the community, as we would say, some of these people kind of come out of the woodwork potentially, and start kind of being more involved in sort of local initiatives and things like that. But maybe we'd also just love to learn more about what you do for your day job as well. I know you've been in the industry for a long time. You're at Open Zeppelin right now, but what do you do when you're not doing ETHSamba?
Yeah, so when I'm not doing ETHSamba, which is most of the time. I mean, for now, ETHSamba is we do an event once a year. I spend a lot of time looking at the Ethereum ecosystem and other like upcoming L1s. And try to understand where we take our set of Open Zeppelin products and services. Open Zeppelin started in the very beginning of Ethereum, actually even before Ethereum, and we ended up building Open Zeppelin contracts, which became the go-to library for building applications, right? So you have a lot of common standards in there that developers use. And over time, we've started doing security services, and we've built an entire kind of end-to-end platform. And so, Ethereum has grown, and nowadays there are many different players in the ecosystem. There's many different approaches, new VMs coming to Ethereum, like Arbitrum Stylus and others, like even the Solana virtual machine with Eclipse. And so, yeah, a lot of my job is trying to see where we bring our products and contracts, and working with those ecosystem players to potentially bring them there. And that's a mix of business development, I would say, but also a lot of community work and being in touch with builders and seeing where what they prefer and where they want to build.
And then I also understand that you've got a kind of a hub, a Web3 hub that you've launched in Rio as well now. You want to tell us about that? Or yeah, maybe it hasn't quite launched. Maybe by the time this episode airs, it will have officially launched. But tell us about that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this is the latest kind of development from the ETHSamba team, and there are many people on the ETHSamba team. I'm kind of the fake Brazilian on the team. I still don't have a passport, even though I've lived here for many years. But Solange, Thiago, Enrique, Jeff, Esther, Marcos, and Felipe, they're all on the team. And we talked a lot about the logistics of organizing an event. It's quite a big thing, and many of us are actually based here in Rio, and so we wanted to have a more kind of regular meetup spot for the community. And we were quite inspired by a few of the kind of other Web3 hubs around the world, and there's some examples of this. Actually, Open Zeppelin itself was started in Casa Voltaire, which was a house in Buenos Aires where a few Web3 projects came out of, where people would co-work and like spend time together, brainstorm, and ended up building some pretty cool companies. And you also have some other examples of this in the US. You have Station NYC in New York. You have House of Web3 in San Francisco that's kind of managed by DeGraph, and even some in Europe and Asia. And given there was a few of us and we needed a space to, just co-work and have a community hub. So we started looking and we ended up finding something. So yeah, we'll be opening in March, just before ETHSamba, and actually during the Rio Onchain Week, which will be a week long of events, and we can get into that in a minute. And so yeah, this space is going to be, for the community to meet up, reduce the logistical kind of nightmare of having to, pick a place, rent, a new venue, and contractual issues and all of that, and just have a regular space that people can come, get together, and build. Yeah.
So let's talk about the Rio Onchain Week. You mentioned, and ETHSamba is sort of like that, like a hackathon you guys are doing is a part of that, but it's also much bigger than just this one particular hackathon as well. So maybe give us kind of the overview of what are you doing here?
Yeah, definitely. So we're organizing a hackathon. There's also within the hackathon a bootcamp that is led by Solange. Many of the developers that have come out of Brazil have actually learned how to build their first Solidity smart contract of Solange. And so our event is very developer focused, and we wanted to bring more events to the kind of the week of when our event would be happening. And to be honest, this was really inspired by Devconnect. We love Devconnect so much as just the ETHSamba team that we said we should replicate it in some way in Rio. And so we decided to just kind of start talking to a lot of different community members around Brazil. So people that are doing media, people that are building other communities in different cities, and we kind of got together and said, hey, could we curate a list of like 10 different events, 10 different organizers for people that are going to come and commit to come to Rio, which is, for developers or, people that are at university is quite a big commitment financially, and, give more to those people. Right. And, it started as an idea between ERC 55, which is a community here in Brazil, and ETHSamba. And now, we have a group chat of 10 different event organizers, and we should be having, many different events. So from the 19th of March all the way to the 24th, which is when the hackathon ceremony is, you'll have a bunch of different events in Rio. You'll actually have different spots where you can work from. So Lumix, which is a dev shop and now building a protocol here in Brazil, they'll be opening up their office. We'll have Bamba Labs that, people can come and, either go to workshops, events, or even just work from. So yeah, the idea is just a week long of content and networking and building here in Rio, and a few minutes away from the beach. So it's a nice balance.
Very cool, very cool. And then Bamba Labs is the name of the venue that you guys are starting, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, so it's Bamba Labs. It's really a hub, for a community hub for people. It's not a co-working space, but people can definitely we're in some capacity we are open to visitors.
For folks who are listening to this who may want to get involved or support you guys or just attend, what's maybe the easiest touch point, and then what do you guys need for, or who are you looking for to partner with on this potentially, or what kind of needs do you guys have as far as getting this thing actually operationalized?
Yeah, so I would say, if you just want to understand, Brazil's ecosystem, you want to connect with, whether that's builders or, institutions that are very present in the country. I think, if you go to rioonchainweek.org, you'll find all the information and all the events, that are, starting to get confirmed for that week. I think if, on the other hand, you actually want to do something in Brazil, right? You can reach out via that website. There's a Telegram chat, and you can definitely reach out there, and we can connect you to some of the organizers. If you see that there's a potential collaboration there, I think we can make that connection, and you can partner with one of the events. If you're a builder, there's a hackathon, there's a bunch of different events. So yeah, I think make sure to check it out, and you'll have an opportunity to attend a Web3 workshop, and 2 minutes later jump on a surfboard, or go for a run in one of the nicest cities in the world. So yeah.
Yeah, it's not a bad value proposition, right? And then just to maybe give us some color about like, is this primarily like ETH focused, or is this more of like a chain agnostic? Maybe, you know, similar, like, you know, think of Devconnect. It's obviously organized by the Ethereum Foundation, or they're kind of the umbrella organization, more or less putting it together, but it becomes kind of like almost like an ETH Denver type of thing where people just pile in, and you have different chains hosting stuff, and, you know, anybody can, it's kind of open source. Anybody can kind of show up and do what they, you know, host something, or be involved in some capacity. But is that, I mean, are you guys more like kind of leaning toward the ETH side of things, or is it really more just open to anybody who is doing anything, you know, on chain related?
Yeah, so we're definitely, I mean, the whole reason it's not a Rio Ethereum week and it's a Rio Onchain week is that we wanted to welcome, you know, other ones that are active in Brazil. And, you know, there are some out there like Ethereum Foundation just, you know, recently announced a big push in Brazil. So we're welcoming, you know, everyone, right? The agenda is very open. We are curating it, of course. We don't want any, you know, scam events happening in the agenda. Or, you know, we're trying to make it as much builder focused as possible. And the ETHSamba hackathon will be Ethereum focused, of course. But the Rio Onchain Week is very open. So if, you know, you're not totally Ethereum aligned, you know, you can use that week to do your own event. I think people do that at ETH Denver, right? I mean, it's not a very permissioned space. You know, the city, anyone can walk in as long as you get into the country, right? So, you know, there's no strict requirements here. And I think the goal for us is really to cultivate this builder mentality that I think, again, you know, ETH Denver has done really well, and the Ethereum network has done really well. But, you know, that's really what we want to do. So if you want to build, you know, useful applications on chain, well, you know, this is going to be a good week to do that.
Maybe give us a bit more color just about who the attendees or who the builders are that you expect to come. Are we looking at kind of, you know, Web3 native folks, you know, maybe Web2 folks who are Web2 builders who are interested in kind of making a transition, or maybe more like university students who are, you know, have an interest in this and are looking for kind of like, what's the next step? You know, what's sort of the demographic, as you would, or what maybe buckets of demographics would you say would be attending this?
Yeah, so I would say the largest bucket that we do see is, you know, Web2 developers. And, you know, we have a strong network with all the universities across Brazil, and we actually, you know, do our best to sponsor as many students and talented students to come to the hackathon and the Rio Onchain Week. So I'd say the main audience will be Web2 developers and of course, you know, maybe more advanced Web3 developers. And I think the great thing about this week is there will be something for everyone. The bootcamp, the ETHSamba hackathon itself will have a beginner's bootcamp, right? So if you've never written a smart contract, you can really get up to speed in a day. Of course, you know, we send materials beforehand, and it's better that you get, you know, you start learning a bit before. And then we also have a more advanced track that's actually going to be curated by ERC55, another community organization here in Brazil. But, you know, as this Rio Onchain Week has grown a bit, we've seen that there's, you know, different profiles coming, right? And, you know, obviously it's not just developers, it's builders of all kinds, designers, product people, business people. And we're also seeing more and more like institutions getting involved, right? And in Brazil, you have some of these, there's some pretty good, like pretty big crypto institutions in the country. And so none of these events have been confirmed yet, but there are some, you know, side events that will be more institutionally focused and not necessarily, you know, developers like building a project or, you know, a technical workshop. And I think, yeah, it's going to be a great opportunity for people to network on, you know, with, you know, companies that are already doing a lot of things here in Brazil and have, yeah, big projects here.
Maybe just last question here, but how do you define success here? Like, you know, how are you going to say, I mean, is the objective here to maybe build up the momentum and keep doing this again next year, or maybe even make this ideally do this maybe multiple times per year? But it seems like you're kind of playing the long game here. So how does this fit into the broader vision, and how are you defining success?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, you know, what we love doing is just, building projects in the Web3 space and seeing people build, right? And especially seeing people build stuff that actually, changes stuff around here, right? And improves, whether that's transparency at the governmental level here, or, efficiency in the processes, which can be a headache sometimes. We just love seeing that. And so if we can cultivate, by doing these community, meetups and hackathons, we can cultivate more of that for Brazil, and then also, kind of bring people, that very talented people, to great roles, or building great projects. I think that's definitely for us a definition of success. So now we're in the hundreds, and I hope that next year our hackathon is attended by thousands of builders. This year we'll be expecting around 500. But I'm sure that Brazil has a lot of great talent that's still out there. So there's still a long way to go. And I think one of the definitions of success will be when there are many ETHSamba communities, and maybe under a different name or a different umbrella across Brazil, right? And doing these kind of meetups on a more regular basis, bringing this technology to more cities across Brazil. So I think, there's still a long way to go compared to some other countries. So
well, Luca, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate you coming on to talk about what you guys are doing. Very inspiring stuff. How can folks find you if they want to get involved, or if they want to learn more?
Yeah, well, thanks for the invite. It was great speaking with you. And if you want to find me, I'm on Twitter. It's @deluca_. And if not, you can just find ETHSamba.org, or, as I mentioned, Rio Onchain Week.org for any details around the events.
Great. Well, any final thoughts from you, Luca, before we wrap up?
Well, I'd say, keep up the great work with the Brazil Crypto Report. It's a really important, I think, it's really important to create this content that is a bridge for Brazil. So, I love reading the newsletter and listening to your other podcast guests. So, thanks for all that content.
Oh, amazing. Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, great. We'll see you all in Rio, March 19th through 26th at Rio Onchain Week. And thank you, Luca, for joining, and thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you all next time.